Question 1. Risk assessment procedures indicate a potential for inconsistencies in the documentation submitted by applicants from certain regions, raising concerns about the authenticity of qualifications and the fairness of the admissions process for Alfred Nobel University Dnipro. Which of the following actions best addresses these identified risks while upholding the university's commitment to academic integrity and equitable admissions? Option A. Disregard the risk assessment findings and continue with the standard admissions review process to avoid any perceived bias or delays in processing applications. Option B. Automatically reject all applications from the identified regions to avoid potential issues with document authenticity, thereby safeguarding the university's academic standards. Option C. Expedite the review of all applications to meet enrollment targets, assuming that the majority of submitted documents are legitimate and addressing any significant issues on a case-by-case basis after admission. Option D. Implement a rigorous verification process for all documents originating from the identified regions, including cross-referencing with issuing institutions where feasible, and establish clear criteria for assessing the validity of qualification. The correct answer is D. Implement a rigorous verification process for all documents originating from the identified regions, including cross-referencing with issuing institutions where feasible, and establish clear criteria for assessing the validity of qualifications. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's need for accurate admissions data with the ethical obligation to protect applicant privacy and ensure fairness. The pressure to meet enrollment targets can create a temptation to overlook irregularities, but adherence to regulatory frameworks and ethical principles is paramount. Careful judgment is required to identify and address potential risks without compromising the integrity of the admissions process. The correct approach involves a systematic review of the admissions process, focusing on identifying and mitigating risks to data integrity and applicant fairness. This includes verifying the authenticity of submitted documents, ensuring consistent application of admission criteria, and establishing clear protocols for handling discrepancies. This approach aligns with the principles of good governance and ethical conduct expected of educational institutions, emphasizing transparency, accountability, and the protection of applicant rights. Specifically, it reflects the spirit of regulations that govern educational institutions, which often mandate fair and transparent admissions processes and the secure handling of personal data. An incorrect approach that involves accepting applications without thorough verification, despite identified risks, fails to uphold the university's responsibility to maintain academic integrity and fair admissions. This could lead to admitting unqualified students, undermining the reputation of the university, and potentially violating regulations that require due diligence in admissions. Another incorrect approach, which is to dismiss all applications from regions with higher perceived risk without individual assessment, constitutes discriminatory practice. This violates principles of equal opportunity and fairness, and could contravene anti-discrimination laws or university policies designed to ensure equitable treatment of all applicants. A further incorrect approach, which is to ignore the risk assessment findings and proceed with admissions as usual, demonstrates a disregard for established risk management protocols and ethical responsibilities. This failure to act on identified risks can expose the university to significant reputational damage, legal challenges, and a breakdown of trust with applicants and stakeholders. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk assessment, followed by the development and implementation of mitigation strategies. This includes consulting relevant university policies, regulatory guidelines, and ethical codes of conduct. When faced with potential conflicts between institutional goals and ethical obligations, professionals should prioritize adherence to established standards and seek guidance from appropriate authorities within the institution if necessary. The focus should always be on maintaining the integrity of the process and ensuring fair treatment for all individuals involved. Question 2. Risk assessment procedures indicate a potential issue with an applicant's submitted academic transcripts for the Alfred Nobel University Dnipro entrance exam, where a key subject grade appears to be unusually high and lacks a clear explanation from the applicant's previous institution. The admissions committee must decide how to proceed. Which of the following actions best upholds the principles of fair and rigorous admissions under Ukrainian educational regulations? Option A. requesting the applicant to provide a formal explanation from their previous educational institution regarding the specific grade, and if necessary, seeking independent verification of the transcript's authenticity before making a final decision. Option B, immediately rejecting the applicant's application due to the suspicious grade, without further investigation or providing the applicant an opportunity to clarify the discrepancy. Option C, approving the application based on the applicant's self-reported academic achievements, trusting their integrity and the accuracy of their submitted documents. Option D, accepting the transcript as submitted, assuming the applicant has met the requirements, to expedite the admissions process and avoid potential delays for the applicant. The correct answer is A, requesting the applicant to provide a formal explanation from their previous educational institution regarding the specific grade, and if necessary, seeking independent verification of the transcript's authenticity before making a final decision. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's need for accurate admissions data with the ethical obligation to protect applicant privacy and ensure fairness in the assessment process. The entrance exam is a critical gateway, and any perceived bias or procedural flaw can have significant reputational and legal consequences for Alfred Nobel University Dnipro. Careful judgment is required to uphold the integrity of the admissions process, while adhering to relevant Ukrainian educational regulations and ethical guidelines for academic institutions. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the applicant's submitted documentation against the stated entry requirements, focusing on verifying the authenticity and completeness of the provided information. This aligns with the principles of fair and transparent admissions, ensuring that all applicants are evaluated based on objective criteria, as outlined in the university's official admission policies and Ukrainian higher education legislation. The university has a duty to verify qualifications to maintain academic standards and prevent fraudulent admissions. An incorrect approach that relies solely on the applicant's self-declaration without independent verification fails to meet the university's responsibility to ensure the validity of admissions. This could lead to admitting unqualified students, undermining the academic reputation of the university, and potentially violating regulations that mandate verification of educational credentials. Another incorrect approach that involves immediately rejecting the applicant based on a minor discrepancy, without allowing for clarification or providing an opportunity to rectify the issue, is overly punitive and may not be in line with fair administrative practices or specific provisions within Ukrainian educational law that allow for reasonable accommodation or correction of minor errors. This approach risks alienating potential students and could be seen as procedurally unfair. A further incorrect approach that involves accepting the application despite clear evidence of missing crucial documentation, without seeking to obtain it, compromises the integrity of the admissions process. This could be interpreted as a breach of the university's own admission standards and potentially violate regulations concerning the completeness of applicant files. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic review of the applicant's file against established admission criteria. If discrepancies or missing information are identified, the professional course of action is to follow the university's established procedures for addressing such issues, which typically include requesting clarification or additional documentation from the applicant within a specified time frame. This ensures fairness, transparency, and adherence to regulatory requirements. Question 3. Benchmark analysis indicates that prospective students applying to Alfred Nobel University Dnipro for their entrance examinations may be tempted to seek shortcuts. Considering the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment, which of the following represents the most ethically sound and regulatory compliant approach for a student preparing for the entrance exam? Option A. Attempting to acquire leaked or pre-released copies of the entrance exam question through unofficial channels. Option B. Submitting a formal request to the admissions department for a list of specific questions or key topics that will be covered in the entrance exam. Option C. Independently preparing for the exam using official study guides and recommended resources, focusing on developing a strong understanding of the subject matter. Option D. Offering a financial incentive to an admissions officer in exchange for advanced knowledge of the exam content. Correct answer is C. Independently preparing for the exam using official study guides and recommended resources, focusing on developing a strong understanding of the subject matter. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic advancement and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment. The pressure to perform well on entrance exams, especially for a prestigious institution like Alfred Nobel University Dnipro, can lead individuals to consider unethical shortcuts. Navigating this requires a strong ethical compass and adherence to established university regulations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves the student independently preparing for the entrance exam using legitimate study materials and resources provided or recommended by Alfred Nobel University Dnipro. This upholds the principle of academic honesty, ensuring that admission is based on the student's own merit and understanding. It aligns with the university's regulatory framework, which implicitly or explicitly prohibits any form of academic misconduct, including the use of unauthorized assistance or pre-existing knowledge of exam content. This approach respects the fairness of the assessment process for all applicants. Correct approach is analysis. Submitting a request for specific exam questions or topics in advance of the examination is a direct violation of academic integrity. This action constitutes an attempt to gain an unfair advantage over other candidates and undermines the validity of the entrance examination as a measure of a student's preparedness. Such a request, if acted upon, would be a breach of the university's examination policies and ethical guidelines, potentially leading to disciplinary action for both the student and any staff member involved. Seeking to purchase or obtain leaked exam materials is also a severe breach of academic ethics and potentially illegal. This action directly contravenes the principles of fair competition and honest assessment. It not only compromises the integrity of the admission process, but also exposes the university to reputational damage and legal repercussions. Universities have strict regulations against such practices, and involvement in them can result in immediate disqualification and severe penalties. Attempting to bribe an admissions officer or faculty member to gain preferential treatment or access to exam information is a form of corruption. This is a grave ethical and legal violation that undermines the fundamental principles of meritocracy and fairness in education. Such actions are strictly prohibited by university codes of conduct and relevant Ukrainian laws governing educational institutions and public service. Professional reasoning. Professionals in an academic setting, including admissions staff and faculty, must prioritize upholding the integrity of the institution and its assessment processes. When faced with requests that could compromise these principles, the decision-making process should involve 1. Identifying the core ethical principles at stake: academic honesty, fairness, and integrity. 2. Consulting relevant university regulations and policies regarding admissions, examinations, and academic misconduct. 3. Refusing any request that deviates from these principles and regulations, clearly communicating the reasons for refusal based on established rules. 4. Reporting any suspected or overt attempts at academic misconduct or corruption through the appropriate university channels to ensure a fair and transparent process for all applicants. Question 4. Risk assessment procedures indicate a potential for undue influence on the upcoming Alfred Nobel University Dnipro entrance examination. A prospective student, aware of your role in the examination administration, approaches you privately and expresses significant anxiety about their chances of admission, subtly hinting at a desire for any tips or insights that might help them perform better, implying they are looking for information beyond standard preparation materials. How should you, as an administrator involved in the examination process, respond to this situation to uphold the integrity of the entrance exam? Option A. Advise the student that while direct assistance is impossible, they should explore all available resources, including past papers and online forums, to gauge the general difficulty and scope of the examination. Option B. Offer general advice on study techniques and time management, while subtly suggesting that focusing on common themes often tested in such exams might be beneficial, without revealing specific content. Option C. Inform the student that, while you cannot provide specific exam details, you can offer to review their application materials to identify areas where they might need to strengthen their profile for admission, shifting the focus away from the exam itself. Option D. Politely but firmly decline to provide any information that could be construed as an unfair advantage, explaining that the examination is designed to assess all candidates on a level playing field according to established criteria, and that any attempt to gain unauthorized insight would compromise the integrity of the process and violate university regulations. Correct answer is D. Politely but firmly decline to provide any information that could be construed as an unfair advantage, explaining that the examination is designed to assess all candidates on a level playing field according to established criteria, and that any attempt to gain unauthorized insight would compromise the integrity of the process and violate university regulations. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic success and the university's commitment to academic integrity. The pressure to perform well in entrance exams, especially for a prestigious institution like Alfred Nobel University Dnipro, can lead individuals to consider unethical shortcuts. The core of the challenge lies in upholding the principles of fairness, honesty, and meritocracy that underpin any educational system. Careful judgment is required to navigate this situation ethically and in accordance with the university's established regulations. The correct approach involves recognizing the ethical implications of the student's request and prioritizing adherence to the Alfred Nobel University Dnipro's entrance exam regulations. This means refusing to provide any unauthorized assistance or information that could compromise the integrity of the examination process. The justification for this approach is rooted in the university's fundamental responsibility to ensure a fair and equitable assessment of all candidates. Providing advanced information or assistance would violate the principles of academic honesty, create an unfair advantage for one candidate over others, and ultimately undermine the credibility of the entrance examination and the university itself. Such actions would also contravene any explicit or implicit codes of conduct expected of university staff or individuals involved in the examination process. An incorrect approach would be to provide the student with advance information about the exam content. This directly violates the principle of fairness and academic integrity. It creates an unearned advantage, disadvantaging other candidates who have prepared through legitimate means. This action would also likely contravene specific university policies regarding examination security and confidentiality, potentially leading to disciplinary action for the individual involved and invalidation of the student's application. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the student's request without any response. While not actively participating in cheating, this passive stance fails to uphold the university's commitment to academic integrity. It leaves the student to potentially pursue other unethical avenues and does not address the underlying issue of academic dishonesty. A responsible professional should actively discourage such behavior and reinforce the importance of ethical conduct. A third incorrect approach would be to suggest that the student find ways to prepare better without explicitly addressing the ethical concerns of the request. This is a vague and unhelpful response that does not provide clear guidance. It fails to educate the student on the importance of academic integrity and the consequences of seeking unfair advantages. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the university's academic integrity policies and examination regulations. When faced with a request that appears to compromise these principles, a professional should: 1. Recognize the ethical dilemma. 2. Consult relevant university policies and guidelines. 3. Clearly and firmly decline any request that violates ethical standards or regulations. 4. Educate the individual making the request about the importance of academic integrity and the consequences of unethical behavior. 5. Report the incident if university policy dictates or if there is a significant risk to the examination process. Question 5. Investigation of a potential academic integrity breach during the Alfred Nobel University Dnipro entrance examination, where a proctor observes a candidate subtly using a pre-written note during a written test, requires a decision on the immediate course of action. Option A. The proctor should discreetly observe the candidate for the remainder of the examination, document the incident, and report it to the examination committee for review after the test concludes. Option B. The proctor should ignore the incident to avoid disrupting the examination environment and address any potential issues after all candidates have finished. Option C. The proctor should immediately confiscate the note, inform the candidate they are disqualified, and escort them out of the examination hall. Option D. The proctor should approach the candidate and quietly ask them to put the note away, warning them not to use it again, and then continue supervising the rest of the exam. The correct answer is C. The proctor should immediately confiscate the note, inform the candidate they are disqualified, and escort them out of the examination hall. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the ethical obligation to maintain academic integrity and fairness during an entrance examination. The challenge lies in balancing the need to uphold the examination's credibility with the potential for unintended consequences of strict adherence to rules, particularly when a candidate's circumstances might warrant consideration. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the examination process is both rigorous and equitable, reflecting the values of Alfred Nobel University Dnipro. The correct approach involves a measured response that prioritizes the integrity of the examination while acknowledging the need for a fair process. This means investigating the observed irregularity thoroughly and impartially, gathering all relevant facts before making a decision. The regulatory framework for university entrance exams, as understood within the context of Ukrainian higher education standards and the specific guidelines of Alfred Nobel University Dnipro, mandates that all candidates be assessed under uniform conditions. Any deviation, if proven, must be addressed according to established procedures, which typically involve a review by an examination committee or relevant academic body. This approach ensures that decisions are based on evidence and adhere to institutional policy, thereby safeguarding the fairness and validity of the entrance process. An incorrect approach would be to immediately disqualify the candidate without a proper investigation. This fails to uphold the principle of due process, which is fundamental in academic and professional settings. It assumes guilt without evidence and bypasses the established procedures for handling suspected irregularities, potentially leading to an unjust outcome and damaging the university's reputation for fairness. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the observation entirely. This directly undermines the integrity of the examination process. By failing to address a potential breach of rules, the university signals a lack of commitment to academic honesty, which can erode trust among other candidates and the wider academic community. It also sets a dangerous precedent, suggesting that rules can be disregarded without consequence. A third incorrect approach would be to allow the candidate to continue and address the issue informally after the exam. While seemingly lenient, this still compromises the uniformity of the examination conditions. It creates an uneven playing field for other candidates who adhered strictly to the rules. Furthermore, informal resolutions often lack the transparency and accountability required by academic regulations, making it difficult to ensure consistent application of standards. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a systematic approach. 1. Observation and documentation. Clearly and objectively record the observed irregularity. 2. Reporting. Immediately report the observation to the designated examination authority or invigilator supervisor according to university protocol. 3. Investigation. Allow the designated authority to conduct a thorough and impartial investigation, gathering evidence from all relevant parties. 4. Decision-making. The examination committee or relevant body should review the findings and make a decision based on established university regulations and policies, ensuring fairness and consistency. 5. Communication. Communicate the decision and its rationale clearly to the candidate, following established procedures. Question 6. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a prospective student applying for admission to Alfred Nobel University Dnipro has a close family member who is a faculty member in a department relevant to their chosen program of study. The student is concerned that this relationship might create a perception of bias or an unfair advantage during the entrance examination process. What is the most ethically sound and procedurally correct course of action for the student to take? Option A. Attempt to discreetly inquire with the faculty family member about the general nature or difficulty of the entrance exam to better prepare. Option B. Proactively disclose the familial relationship to the university's admissions committee and seek guidance on how to proceed with the entrance examination to ensure fairness and transparency. Option C. Proceed with the entrance examination without mentioning the relationship, assuming it will not influence the outcome or be discovered. Option D. Withdraw their application to avoid any potential complications or perceptions of impropriety. Correct answer is B. Proactively disclose the familial relationship to the university's admissions committee and seek guidance on how to proceed with the entrance examination to ensure fairness and transparency. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic success and the university's commitment to academic integrity. The pressure to perform well in an entrance exam, especially for a prestigious institution like Alfred Nobel University Dnipro, can lead individuals to consider unethical shortcuts. The core of the challenge lies in upholding the principles of fairness, honesty, and meritocracy that underpin any educational institution's admission process. Careful judgment is required to navigate this situation ethically and in compliance with the university's established regulations. The correct approach involves a proactive and transparent communication with the university administration regarding the potential conflict of interest. This demonstrates integrity and a commitment to ethical conduct. By disclosing the relationship and seeking guidance, the student is adhering to the spirit of fairness and avoiding any perception of impropriety. This aligns with the general ethical principles expected of all individuals interacting with the university, including prospective students, and implicitly supports the university's commitment to a fair and unbiased admission process. While specific entrance exam regulations for Alfred Nobel University Dnipro are not detailed here, the overarching principle of avoiding conflicts of interest and maintaining academic integrity is universally applicable in educational settings. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the exam without disclosing the relationship. This constitutes a failure to uphold transparency and honesty, potentially violating implicit or explicit university guidelines regarding conflicts of interest. It creates a situation where the student's performance could be perceived as influenced by their personal connection, undermining the fairness of the examination process for other candidates. Another incorrect approach would be to attempt to leverage the personal relationship to gain an unfair advantage, such as seeking advance information about the exam content or preferential treatment. This is a direct violation of academic integrity and would likely lead to severe disciplinary action, including disqualification from the entrance exam and potential blacklisting from future admissions. It fundamentally betrays the trust placed in the examination system and the university. A third incorrect approach would be to ignore the situation and hope that the relationship goes unnoticed. This passive approach is still ethically flawed, as it fails to address a known potential conflict of interest. It relies on chance rather than on responsible action and could still lead to accusations of impropriety if the relationship becomes known later. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding of the university's code of conduct and ethical guidelines. When a potential conflict of interest arises, the primary steps should be: 1. Identify the potential conflict. 2. Consult relevant university policies and regulations. 3. Seek guidance from the appropriate university authority, e.g., Admissions Office Ethics Committee. 4. Act transparently and ethically based on the advice received. This proactive and principled approach ensures that decisions are made in alignment with institutional values and regulatory expectations. Question 7. Risk assessment procedures indicate a potential breach of academic integrity during the Alfred Nobel University Dnipro entrance exam, where a candidate is observed discreetly using unauthorized notes. What is the most appropriate course of action for a proctor to take? Option A. Ignore the observed behavior to avoid disrupting the examination environment and potentially causing a scene. Option B. Confront the candidate directly and confiscate the unauthorized notes, attempting to resolve the issue on the spot. Option C. Immediately report the observed incident to the designated university examination authority for investigation and appropriate action. Option D. Discuss the observed incident with other proctors and candidates to gather opinions on how to proceed. The correct answer is C. Immediately report the observed incident to the designated university examination authority for investigation and appropriate action. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic success and the university's commitment to academic integrity. The pressure to perform well in an entrance exam, especially for a prestigious institution like Alfred Nobel University Dnipro, can lead individuals to consider unethical shortcuts. The core of the challenge lies in upholding the principles of fairness, honesty, and meritocracy that underpin any educational institution's admission process. Careful judgment is required to navigate this situation ethically and in accordance with the university's established guidelines. The correct approach involves recognizing the potential for academic misconduct and proactively addressing it by reporting the observed behavior to the appropriate university authority. This aligns with the university's responsibility to maintain a fair and equitable admission process. Specifically, the regulatory framework for university entrance exams, as implicitly understood within the context of academic institutions, mandates that all candidates be assessed on their own merit. Allowing or ignoring academic dishonesty undermines this principle and compromises the integrity of the entire admission system. Reporting the incident is an ethical obligation to ensure a level playing field for all applicants and to uphold the university's reputation. An incorrect approach would be to ignore the observed behavior. This failure stems from a disregard for academic integrity and a passive acceptance of potential cheating. Ethically, it constitutes a dereliction of duty to the university and to other honest applicants. Another incorrect approach would be to confront the student directly and attempt to resolve the issue personally. While seemingly proactive, this bypasses the established university procedures for handling academic misconduct. It could lead to an escalation of the situation, potential personal risk, and importantly, it does not guarantee that the university's disciplinary processes will be initiated, thus failing to address the systemic issue of academic integrity. A third incorrect approach would be to discuss the observed behavior with other students. This constitutes a breach of confidentiality and can lead to gossip and reputational damage, without contributing to a proper resolution of the academic integrity concern. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding of the university's code of conduct and academic integrity policies. When faced with evidence or suspicion of academic misconduct, the immediate and appropriate step is to report the matter through the designated channels, such as the admissions office or an academic integrity committee. This ensures that the university can investigate thoroughly and take appropriate action, thereby safeguarding the fairness and credibility of the entrance examination process. Question 8. When evaluating potential candidates for admission to Alfred Nobel University Dnipro and faced with pressure to meet enrollment targets, what is the most ethically and regulatorily sound approach to ensure the integrity of the admissions process? Option A. Strictly adhere to all established admission criteria and procedures, ensuring each applicant is evaluated impartially based on merit and qualifications, regardless of external pressures or perceived institutional needs. Option B. Focus on admitting candidates who can immediately fill enrollment gaps, even if it means admitting individuals who do not fully meet the established academic prerequisites. Option C. Expedite the admission of candidates with connections to influential individuals or organizations, overlooking minor discrepancies in their application documents to secure their enrollment. Option D. Prioritize admitting candidates who demonstrate strong potential for future financial contributions to the university, even if their academic qualifications are slightly below the standard requirements. The correct answer is A. Strictly adhere to all established admission criteria and procedures, ensuring each applicant is evaluated impartially based on merit and qualifications, regardless of external pressures or perceived institutional needs. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's immediate financial needs and the long-term ethical and regulatory obligations concerning academic integrity and fair admissions. The pressure to meet enrollment targets can tempt individuals to overlook established procedures, potentially leading to severe reputational damage and legal repercussions for the university. Careful judgment is required to balance institutional goals with adherence to the established regulatory framework governing university admissions. The correct approach involves a thorough and impartial review of all applications, strictly adhering to the admission criteria and procedures outlined by Alfred Nobel University Dnipro's internal regulations and any relevant Ukrainian higher education laws. This means evaluating each candidate based on their academic merit, extracurricular achievements, and any other stipulated requirements, without undue influence from external pressures or perceived institutional needs. This approach is justified by the fundamental ethical principles of fairness, transparency, and academic integrity, which are implicitly or explicitly mandated by the regulatory framework for higher education institutions. Upholding these standards ensures that admissions are merit-based and that the university maintains its credibility and reputation. An incorrect approach that prioritizes meeting enrollment targets by admitting underqualified candidates, even if they have potential connections or can pay higher fees, represents a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This undermines the principle of equal opportunity and devalues the academic achievements of genuinely qualified applicants. Such actions could violate Ukrainian laws pertaining to higher education admissions, which typically emphasize meritocracy and non-discrimination. Furthermore, it breaches the university's own internal policies and ethical codes, leading to a loss of trust among students, faculty, and the wider community. Another incorrect approach, that of selectively overlooking minor discrepancies in an applicant's documentation to expedite their admission due to perceived urgency or potential financial benefit, is also professionally unacceptable. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the established admission processes. It opens the door to fraudulent applications and compromises the integrity of the student body. Ethically, it is dishonest and creates an unfair advantage. From a regulatory standpoint, it could contravene requirements for accurate record-keeping and adherence to documented admission procedures. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the university's mission, its ethical commitments, and the applicable regulatory framework. When faced with conflicting pressures, professionals should first consult the relevant policies and laws. If ambiguity exists, seeking guidance from senior management, legal counsel, or an ethics committee is crucial. The decision should always prioritize adherence to established procedures and ethical principles, even if it means facing short-term challenges. Transparency and accountability are paramount throughout the admissions process. Question 9. Process analysis reveals that prospective students for the Alfred Nobel University Dnipro entrance exam are seeking the most effective preparation methods. Considering the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment, which of the following represents the most ethically sound and procedurally compliant approach for a candidate aiming for admission? Option A. Engaging a tutor who claims to have insider knowledge of the exam's specific questions and format. Option B. Attempting to obtain a copy of the previous year's exam questions through informal online channels to gauge the difficulty in topics covered. Option C. Diligently studying official course syllabi, recommended textbooks, and practice materials provided by the university, and seeking clarification from admissions officers regarding any ambiguities in the exam scope. Option D. Relying on study notes shared by current students that are rumored to contain key questions from past exams. The correct answer is C. Diligently studying official course syllabi, recommended textbooks, and practice materials provided by the university, and seeking clarification from admissions officers regarding any ambiguities in the exam scope. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic advancement and the university's obligation to uphold academic integrity and fair assessment practices. The pressure to perform well on an entrance exam, especially for a competitive program at Alfred Nobel University Dnipro, can lead individuals to consider unethical shortcuts. Navigating this requires a strong understanding of the university's regulatory framework and ethical guidelines. The correct approach involves a student independently preparing for the entrance exam using legitimate study materials and resources provided or recommended by Alfred Nobel University Dnipro. This upholds the principle of academic honesty, ensuring that the student's admission is based on their own merit and demonstrated knowledge. This aligns with the university's commitment to fair and equitable admission processes, as stipulated by its internal regulations and general principles of academic governance, which prioritize truthful representation of a candidate's abilities. An incorrect approach would be to seek or use unauthorized advance copies of the exam questions. This constitutes academic dishonesty and a violation of the university's examination rules. Such an action undermines the integrity of the entire admission process, devalues the achievements of other candidates who prepared honestly, and violates the ethical obligation of the student to present their own work. It also directly contravenes the spirit and letter of any regulations governing fair examination practices. Another incorrect approach would be to engage a third party to complete the exam on the student's behalf. This is a form of impersonation and academic fraud. It not only violates the university's rules on academic integrity, but also misrepresents the student's qualifications and capabilities, potentially leading to their failure in subsequent coursework and damaging the reputation of the university. This action directly breaches the trust placed in candidates during the admission process. A further incorrect approach would be to rely on rumors or unverified information about the exam content from unofficial sources. While not as severe as direct cheating, it still demonstrates a lack of commitment to genuine preparation and can lead to a skewed understanding of the required knowledge. It deviates from the expected diligence in preparing for a formal assessment, and can be seen as an attempt to gain an unfair advantage through unreliable means, potentially violating guidelines that expect candidates to rely on official curriculum and study guides. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the university's academic regulations, ethical codes, and examination policies. Candidates should prioritize honest preparation, seek clarification from official university channels if unsure about study materials or exam format, and resist any temptation to engage in or condone unethical practices. The focus should always be on demonstrating one's own abilities through legitimate means. Question 10. Analysis of the Alfred Nobel University Dnipro's endowment fund management strategy. The university administration is considering an investment proposal that promises exceptionally high short-term returns, but carries significant reputational risks due to the target company's controversial labor practices. The university's current operating budget is strained, creating pressure to secure immediate funding. Considering the regulatory framework governing nonprofit organizations in Ukraine and the ethical responsibilities of university leadership, which of the following approaches best aligns with prudent and responsible endowment management? Option A. Reject the investment proposal due to its significant reputational risks and ethical concerns, and instead focus on diversifying the endowment into a mix of low-risk, stable return assets, even if it means slower growth and continued budget constraints in the short term. Option B. Invest a portion of the endowment in the high-return proposal, while hedging the reputational risk through a public relations campaign, believing that the financial benefits outweigh potential negative publicity. Option C. Seek immediate external funding through loans or grants to cover the budget deficit, thereby avoiding the need to make any potentially risky investment decisions with the endowment. Option D. Prioritize the investment proposal that offers the highest immediate financial returns, as this will alleviate current budget pressures and demonstrate financial acumen to stakeholders. Correct answer is D. Prioritize the investment proposal that offers the highest immediate financial returns, as this will alleviate current budget pressures and demonstrate financial acumen to stakeholders. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's immediate financial needs and the long-term implications of its investment strategy. The university's administration, as stakeholders, must balance the desire for quick returns with the fiduciary duty to preserve and grow the endowment for future generations. This requires careful consideration of risk tolerance, ethical investment principles, and adherence to any relevant Ukrainian regulations governing nonprofit educational institutions and their endowments. The decision-making process is complicated by the pressure to meet current operational budgets, which can lead to short-sighted choices. The correct approach involves a thorough due diligence process that prioritizes the long-term sustainability and ethical alignment of investment decisions. This includes assessing the risk profile of potential investments against the university's stated investment policy, considering the liquidity needs of the endowment, and ensuring compliance with Ukrainian civil law concerning the management of assets by nonprofit organizations. A responsible approach would involve diversifying the portfolio, seeking expert financial advice, and establishing clear governance procedures for investment oversight. This aligns with the ethical obligation to act in the best interest of the university and its beneficiaries, both present and future. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on maximizing short-term returns without adequate risk assessment would be professionally unacceptable. This could lead to excessive exposure to volatile assets, potentially jeopardizing the principle of the endowment and its ability to fund future academic programs or infrastructure. Such a strategy would likely violate the principles of prudent investment management expected of a university endowment and could be seen as a breach of fiduciary duty under Ukrainian law. Another incorrect approach that involves investing in companies with questionable ethical practices, even if they offer high returns, would also be professionally unacceptable. This could damage the university's reputation, alienate donors and alumni, and contradict the educational mission of fostering responsible citizenship. Ukrainian law, while not always explicitly detailing ethical investment mandates for endowments, generally expects organizations to operate with integrity and in a manner that upholds their public mission. A third incorrect approach that neglects to establish clear investment policies and oversight mechanisms would be a failure in governance. Without defined parameters for risk, return, and ethical considerations, investment decisions can become arbitrary and susceptible to undue influence, increasing the likelihood of poor outcomes and potential legal or reputational repercussions. The professional decision-making process for such situations should involve 1. Understanding the university's mission, financial needs, and risk appetite. 2. Reviewing and adhering to the established investment policy statement. 3. Conducting comprehensive due diligence on all potential investments, considering both financial returns and ethical implications. 4. Seeking independent financial and legal advice. 5. Ensuring transparency and accountability in the investment process. 6. Regularly reviewing and reporting on investment performance and strategy. Question 11. Process analysis reveals that a prospective student applying to Alfred Nobel University Dnipro has a strong academic record, but a significant gap in their extracurricular involvement during a particular academic year due to personal circumstances. The student is considering highlighting unrelated, minor activities from earlier years to fill this perceived void in their application, rather than explaining the gap, which approach best upholds the principles of academic integrity and fair evaluation. Option A. Exaggerate the significance and duration of unrelated, minor extracurricular activities to compensate for the perceived lack of recent involvement. Option B. Focus on and elaborate on minor extracurricular activities from earlier years to create a more robust profile, omitting any mention of the gap. Option C. Honestly explain the circumstances that led to the gap in extracurricular involvement, while still presenting all other relevant achievements accurately. Option D. Submit the application with a minimal description of extracurriculars, hoping the strong academic record will outweigh the perceived deficiency. The correct answer is C. Honestly explain the circumstances that led to the gap in extracurricular involvement, while still presenting all other relevant achievements accurately. Explanation. The scenario presents a common ethical dilemma faced by prospective students during the university entrance process. The challenge lies in balancing the desire to present oneself favorably with the obligation to provide truthful and accurate information. Misrepresenting academic achievements or extracurricular involvement, even if perceived as minor, can undermine the integrity of the admissions process and the applicant's own credibility. The correct approach involves a commitment to honesty and transparency. This means accurately reflecting one's academic record, including any challenges or areas for improvement, and truthfully describing participation in extracurricular activities. This aligns with the fundamental ethical principle of integrity, which is paramount in academic and professional settings. For Alfred Nobel University Dnipro, adherence to its stated admission policies and ethical guidelines, which implicitly or explicitly demand truthfulness, is crucial. By being honest, the applicant demonstrates respect for the university's evaluation process and builds a foundation of trust. An incorrect approach would be to embellish or fabricate information. This could manifest as exaggerating grades, misrepresenting the extent of involvement in clubs, or claiming leadership roles not actually held. Such actions constitute a breach of academic integrity and violate the trust placed in applicants. Ethically, this is dishonest and misleading. From a regulatory perspective, if the university has specific guidelines or a code of conduct for applicants, misrepresentation would likely be a direct violation, potentially leading to disqualification or rescinded admission. Another incorrect approach would be to focus solely on perceived strengths, while omitting any weaknesses or areas where performance was less than ideal. While it is natural to want to highlight positive aspects, a complete and honest picture is required for a fair assessment. Omitting relevant information, even if not outright false, can be as misleading as fabricating it, and fails to provide the admissions committee with the necessary context to make an informed decision. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes honesty, fairness, and adherence to established rules. This involves critically evaluating the information being presented, considering the potential impact of any misrepresentation, and always erring on the side of full disclosure. When in doubt, It is always better to be more transparent and provide additional context rather than to omit or distort information. Question 12. Process analysis reveals that a prospective student applying to Alfred Nobel University Dnipro for the upcoming academic year has participated in several international academic competitions. While the student has achieved commendable results in some, they have also received less favorable outcomes in others. The university's application form requires a comprehensive list of all such participations. The student is considering only listing the competitions where they achieve top rankings, believing that the less successful participations are not relevant and might detract from their overall strong profile. Which of the following represents the most ethically sound and procedurally correct approach for the applicant? Option A. Exaggerate the achievements in the less successful competitions to make them appear more significant and thus worthy of inclusion in the application. Option B. Selectively list only the international academic competitions where the student achieved top rankings, omitting those with less favorable results to present a stronger overall application. Option C. Fully and accurately disclose all international academic competition participations, regardless of the outcome, as required by the university's application guidelines. Option D. Contact the university admissions office to inquire if there is a minimum threshold for reporting competition results, suggesting that only results above a certain level of achievement need to be disclosed. Correct answer is C. Fully and accurately disclose all international academic competition participations, regardless of the outcome, as required by the university's application guidelines. Explanation. The scenario presents a common ethical dilemma faced by prospective students during the university entrance exam process, specifically concerning the integrity of academic admissions. The challenge lies in balancing the desire to gain admission with the obligation to adhere to the university's stated regulations and ethical standards. Misrepresenting information, even if perceived as minor or a common practice, undermines the fairness of the selection process and the credibility of the institution. The correct approach involves a commitment to honesty and transparency throughout the application process. This means accurately reporting all relevant information, including academic achievements, extracurricular activities, and any other details requested by Alfred Nobel University Dnipro. Adhering to the university's stated admission guidelines and ethical conduct policies is paramount. This approach upholds the principles of academic integrity, fairness to all applicants, and respect for the university's established procedures. It ensures that admissions decisions are based on genuine qualifications and merit, fostering a culture of trust and ethical behavior within the academic community. An incorrect approach would be to deliberately omit or falsify information on the application. This action directly violates the trust placed in applicants by the university and contravenes the spirit of fair competition. Such misrepresentation can lead to severe consequences, including the revocation of admission offers or degrees, and can damage the applicant's reputation. Another incorrect approach would be to seek undue influence or leverage through unofficial channels, bypassing the established merit-based selection process. This undermines the fairness of the examination and admission procedures, potentially creating an uneven playing field for other candidates. A third incorrect approach might involve misinterpreting or selectively applying the university's regulations to justify borderline ethical conduct, such as exaggerating achievements. This demonstrates a lack of commitment to the core ethical principles expected of all members of the academic community. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes ethical conduct and adherence to established rules. This involves clearly understanding the university's regulations and ethical guidelines, assessing the potential consequences of any action, and choosing the path that upholds integrity and fairness. When in doubt, seeking clarification from the university admissions office is a responsible step. Question 13. Research into the admission process for Alfred Nobel University Dnipro reveals a prospective applicant has approached an administrator with a request for tips on how to answer specific questions on the upcoming entrance exam, implying a desire for direct guidance beyond general instructions. The administrator is aware that the exam is designed to assess an applicant's independent knowledge and critical thinking skills. What is the most ethically and regulatorily sound course of action for the administrator to take? Option A. Politely decline to provide any specific guidance on exam questions, clearly explain the university's strict policy on academic integrity and the prohibition of any form of cheating or unauthorized assistance, and emphasize the importance of the applicant demonstrating their own abilities. Option B. Advise the applicant that while direct help is not permitted, they should focus their preparation on specific topics that are known to be heavily weighted in the exam. Option C. Offer to review the applicant's practice answers and provide feedback on how to improve them, subtly guiding them towards correct responses without explicitly stating them. Option D. Inform the applicant that such requests are inappropriate and that they will be noted for potential further review by the admissions committee. The correct answer is A. Politely decline to provide any specific guidance on exam questions, clearly explain the university's strict policy on academic integrity and the prohibition of any form of cheating or unauthorized assistance, and emphasize the importance of the applicant demonstrating their own abilities. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic advancement and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment. The pressure to perform well in entrance exams, especially for prestigious institutions like Alfred Nobel University Dnipro, can lead individuals to consider unethical shortcuts. Careful judgment is required to uphold ethical standards while acknowledging the student's aspirations. The correct approach involves a direct and transparent conversation with the student about the university's policies on academic honesty and the consequences of plagiarism or any form of academic misconduct. This approach prioritizes ethical conduct and adherence to the regulatory framework of the Alfred Nobel University Dnipro entrance exam, which implicitly or explicitly prohibits dishonest practices. By educating the student and reinforcing the importance of original work, the university upholds its commitment to fair assessment and the integrity of its admissions process. This aligns with the fundamental principles of academic governance that aim to ensure a level playing field for all applicants. An incorrect approach would be to provide the student with direct assistance in completing the exam questions, or to offer to review their work in a manner that suggests providing answers or guidance beyond general clarification of instructions. This would constitute aiding and abetting academic dishonesty, directly violating the spirit and likely the letter of the entrance exam regulations. Such an action undermines the validity of the assessment and creates an unfair advantage, compromising the university's reputation and the value of its degrees. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the student's request and proceed as if no such conversation occurred. This passive stance fails to address a potential ethical breach proactively. While it might avoid direct complicity, it neglects the university's responsibility to foster an ethical academic environment and to guide students towards understanding and adhering to academic integrity standards. This inaction could be interpreted as a tacit acceptance of potential misconduct. A further incorrect approach would be to immediately report the student for attempted academic misconduct, without first attempting to understand the student's intent or providing an opportunity for education. While vigilance against misconduct is crucial, an overly punitive initial response without due process or educational intervention can be counterproductive and may not align with the university's disciplinary procedures, which often emphasize education and remediation for first-time or minor offenses. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve 1. Recognizing the ethical dilemma and the potential for academic misconduct. 2. Consulting the specific regulations and guidelines of the Alfred Nobel University Dnipro entrance exam concerning academic integrity and applicant conduct. 3. Engaging in a direct, professional, and educational conversation with the student, clearly outlining university policies and the importance of original work. 4. Documenting the interaction and the advice provided. 5. If the student persists in seeking unethical assistance or engages in misconduct, following the established university procedures for reporting and addressing academic dishonesty. Question 14. The performance metrics show a decline in academic engagement for a cohort of students in their second year. One proposed response is to immediately restrict their access to advanced elective courses based solely on these metrics, without further inquiry into the reasons behind the engagement drop. Another proposed response is to offer targeted academic support workshops and individual counseling sessions to these students, while also reviewing their overall academic progress holistically. A third proposed response is to assume the decline is due to a lack of interest in the subject matter and suggest they consider alternative study paths. A fourth proposed response is to use these metrics to justify a reduction in university funding for programs associated with this cohort, which approach best aligns with the principles of student support and fair academic assessment within the regulatory framework of Alfred Nobel University Dnipro. Option A. Using these metrics to justify a reduction in university funding for programs associated with this cohort. Option B. Offering targeted academic support workshops and individual counseling sessions to these students, while also reviewing their overall academic progress holistically. Option C. Assuming the decline is due to a lack of interest in the subject matter and suggesting they consider alternative study paths. Option D. Immediately restricting their access to advanced elective courses based solely on these metrics, without further inquiry into the reasons behind the engagement drop. The correct answer is B. Offering targeted academic support workshops and individual counseling sessions to these students, while also reviewing their overall academic progress holistically. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in academic institutions where performance data, while informative, can be interpreted in multiple ways, potentially leading to biased or unfair conclusions, if not handled with professional rigor and adherence to institutional guidelines. The challenge lies in moving beyond raw data to a nuanced understanding that respects individual circumstances and institutional policies. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any decisions based on these metrics are equitable, transparent, and aligned with the university's stated objectives and ethical standards. The correct approach involves a comprehensive review that considers qualitative factors alongside quantitative performance metrics. This means acknowledging that students' academic journey is not solely defined by numerical outcomes. Factors such as engagement with university resources, participation in academic support programs, and extenuating personal circumstances can significantly influence performance. By integrating these elements, the university can form a more holistic and accurate assessment, which is ethically sound and aligns with principles of fairness and student support. This approach is justified by the implicit requirement of any reputable educational institution to foster a supportive learning environment and to apply its policies consistently and with consideration for individual student needs, as often outlined in university charters or student handbooks, which serve as the primary regulatory framework for internal academic matters. An approach that focuses solely on the quantitative performance metrics without further investigation is professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a lack of due diligence and an over-reliance on potentially incomplete data. It risks penalizing students unfairly, ignoring underlying issues that may be hindering performance, and violating the ethical principle of treating students with respect and providing opportunities for improvement. Such an approach could also contravene internal university regulations that mandate a fair and thorough review process for academic standing. Another incorrect approach is to immediately implement punitive measures based on the initial metrics. This demonstrates a premature judgment and a disregard for due process. Ethically, students should be given an opportunity to understand the performance concerns and to respond or seek assistance before any adverse actions are taken. This approach fails to uphold the university's responsibility to support its students and to ensure that decisions are made impartially and with full consideration of all relevant information. A third incorrect approach involves making assumptions about the reasons for the performance metrics without consulting the student or relevant academic advisors. This is a violation of professional ethics, which requires transparency and open communication. It also bypasses established university procedures for addressing academic concerns, which typically involve dialogue and support mechanisms. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured multi-stage approach. 1. Data review, initial assessment of performance metrics. 2. Contextualization, gathering additional information, including qualitative data and student feedback. 3. Consultation, discussing findings with relevant academic staff, advisors, and potentially the student. 4. Policy application, applying institutional policies fairly and consistently, considering all gathered information. 5. Decision and communication, making a well-reasoned decision and communicating it clearly to the student, outlining next steps and support available. Question 15. Comparative studies suggest that applicants to competitive university entrance exams often face ethical dilemmas regarding the use of preparatory resources. Considering the specific regulatory framework of the Alfred Nobel University Dnipro entrance exam, which mandates absolute adherence to its examination guidelines, how should an applicant ethically approach the period leading up to and including the examination itself, particularly when encountering challenging subject matter? Option A. Utilize a wide range of unofficial online forums and paid tutoring services that claim to offer insider tips for the exam, even if their legitimacy is unverified. Option B. Rely solely on officially sanctioned study materials provided by the university and engage in independent, honest preparation without seeking external aid or unauthorized resources. Option C. Share exam content and strategies with other applicants through unofficial channels to collectively improve performance. Option D. Focus on memorizing answers to potential questions from past unofficial practice tests, assuming this will demonstrate sufficient knowledge. The correct answer is B. Rely solely on officially sanctioned study materials provided by the university and engage in independent, honest preparation without seeking external aid or unauthorized resources. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between academic integrity and the pressure to achieve favorable entrance exam results. The university's regulatory framework, as defined by the Alfred Nobel University Dnipro entrance exam guidelines, strictly prohibits any form of academic dishonesty. The core ethical principle at play is fairness and equal opportunity for all applicants, which is undermined by any attempt to gain an unfair advantage. The correct approach involves adhering strictly to the examination rules and regulations as stipulated by Alfred Nobel University Dnipro. This means ensuring that all submitted work is the applicant's own, without any external assistance or unauthorized materials. This aligns directly with the university's stated commitment to academic integrity and the principles of fair assessment, as outlined in their entrance examination guidelines. Any deviation from these rules constitutes a breach of academic conduct. An incorrect approach would be to utilize unauthorized study materials or seek assistance from external sources during the examination period. This directly violates the spirit and letter of the Alfred Nobel University Dnipro entrance exam regulations, which are designed to assess an applicant's individual knowledge and capabilities. Such actions not only compromise the validity of the examination results, but also demonstrate a lack of integrity, which is a fundamental requirement for admission into any reputable academic institution. Another incorrect approach would be to misrepresent one's qualifications or prior academic achievements to gain an advantage. This is a form of deception that directly contravenes the ethical standards expected of all applicants and is explicitly forbidden by the university's admissions policy. The professional decision-making process for applicants facing such situations should involve a clear understanding of the examination rules and a commitment to ethical conduct. Applicants must prioritize honesty and self-reliance, recognizing that true academic success is built on genuine effort and understanding. When in doubt about any rule or expectation, it is always advisable to seek clarification from the examination administrators rather than risking a violation. Question 16. System analysis indicates that an admissions officer at Alfred Nobel University Dnipro receives an email from a prospective student inquiring about the specific topics or types of questions that will be covered in the upcoming entrance examination, stating they are feeling anxious and want to prepare effectively. The admissions officer is aware that sharing such detailed information would provide an unfair advantage and compromise the integrity of the examination process. What is the most appropriate course of action for the admissions officer to take in this situation, adhering strictly to the principles of academic integrity and the likely regulatory framework governing university entrance examinations in Ukraine? Option A. Provide the student with a list of the most common topics that have appeared in previous year's examinations to help them focus their preparation. Option B. Respond to the student by sharing a few sample questions that are representative of the difficulty level and subject matter, assuring them it will not be the actual exam content. Option C. Forward the student's email to the university's legal department for immediate investigation into potential academic misconduct. Option D. Politely inform the student that specific examination content cannot be disclosed to maintain fairness and the integrity of the entrance process, and direct them to the general syllabus or preparation guidelines provided by the university. Correct answer is D. Politely inform the student that specific examination content cannot be disclosed to maintain fairness and the integrity of the entrance process, and direct them to the general syllabus or preparation guidelines provided by the university. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the ethical obligation to maintain academic integrity and uphold the reputation of Alfred Nobel University Dnipro. The challenge lies in balancing the need to assist a prospective student with the imperative to prevent academic dishonesty, which could undermine the fairness of the entrance examination process and the credibility of the university. Careful judgment is required to discern between legitimate academic support and unethical facilitation of cheating. The correct approach involves a direct and transparent communication with the prospective student, clearly stating the university's policy against the sharing of examination materials and the consequences of such actions. This approach upholds the principles of academic integrity and fairness, which are fundamental to any educational institution's entrance examination process. By adhering to the university's stated regulations and ethical guidelines, the admissions officer acts responsibly, ensuring that all candidates are evaluated on their own merit. This aligns with the implicit regulatory framework governing university admissions, which prioritizes fair and equitable assessment. An incorrect approach of providing the student with specific questions or topics from the exam would be a direct violation of academic integrity policies. This action constitutes facilitating academic dishonesty, which is ethically reprehensible and likely contravenes internal university regulations concerning examination security and fairness. Such behavior would undermine the validity of the entrance examination and could lead to disciplinary action against both the student and the admissions officer. Another incorrect approach of ignoring the student's request and proceeding without any response fails to address a potential breach of academic integrity. While not actively participating in cheating, this passive stance neglects the responsibility to uphold the examination's fairness and could be interpreted as a dereliction of duty. It leaves the door open for potential future misconduct without establishing clear boundaries. A further incorrect approach of reporting the student to external authorities without first addressing the issue internally, and according to university policy, is premature and potentially escalates the situation unnecessarily. While external reporting might be a last resort, the primary responsibility lies with the university to manage its own admissions processes and address breaches of its regulations through its established procedures. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the university's academic integrity policies and ethical guidelines. When faced with a request that raises concerns, the professional should first consult these policies. If the request appears to border on or constitute academic misconduct, the appropriate step is to communicate clearly and directly with the individual, explaining the relevant policies and the consequences of noncompliance. If the situation warrants further action, it should be escalated through the university's internal disciplinary procedures, ensuring fairness and due process for all parties involved. Question 17. Regulatory review indicates that the Alfred Nobel University Dnipro Admissions Committee has received an application from a prospective student whose parent is a significant donor to the university. The parent has informally communicated a desire for their child to receive special consideration during the admissions process. Which of the following approaches best upholds the regulatory framework and ethical guidelines governing university admissions in this context? Option A. Grant the applicant preferential treatment in the admissions process to acknowledge the parent's valuable contributions to the university. Option B. Inform the parent that their child's application will be reviewed favorably due to their significant financial support. Option C. Evaluate the applicant solely based on the published admission criteria and academic qualifications, irrespective of the parent's donor status, and communicate the decision based on these objective factors. Option D. Decline to review the application until the parent withdraws their request for special consideration, to avoid any appearance of impropriety. Correct answer is C. Evaluate the applicant solely based on the published admission criteria and academic qualifications, irrespective of the parent's donor status, and communicate the decision based on these objective factors. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's stated commitment to academic integrity and the potential for undue influence from external stakeholders. The applicant's father, a significant donor, is leveraging his position to seek preferential treatment for his child's admission. Navigating this situation requires a delicate balance of upholding institutional policies, maintaining ethical standards, and managing donor relations. The University Admissions Committee must act with impartiality and transparency to ensure fairness to all applicants. The correct approach involves a strict adherence to the established admission criteria and a transparent process that is applied equally to all candidates, regardless of their background or familial connections. This upholds the principle of meritocracy, which is fundamental to academic institutions. By focusing solely on the applicant's qualifications as outlined in the university's official admission guidelines, the committee demonstrates its commitment to academic excellence and fairness. This approach aligns with ethical principles of impartiality and avoids any perception of favoritism or corruption, thereby safeguarding the university's reputation and the integrity of its admission process. An incorrect approach would be to grant the applicant special consideration based on their father's donor status. This directly violates the principle of equal opportunity and undermines the merit-based system. It creates an unfair advantage for one applicant over others who may be equally or more qualified, but lack such connections. This action would be ethically unsound, as it prioritizes external influence over academic merit. Furthermore, it could lead to a perception of corruption or cronyism, damaging the university's standing within the academic community and among the general public. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the father's request entirely without any formal acknowledgement or explanation. While this might seem like a way to avoid direct compromise, it fails to address the situation professionally. It could lead to strained donor relations and potentially negative publicity if the donor feels slighted or ignored. A more professional response would involve a clear, policy-based communication that explains the admission process and criteria, even if it means declining the father's implicit request for preferential treatment. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding and application of the university's admission policies and ethical codes. When faced with potential conflicts of interest or undue influence, professionals should 1. Consult and strictly follow established institutional policies and procedures. 2. Prioritize fairness, impartiality, and transparency in all decisions. 3. Document all interactions and decisions related to the admission process. 4. If necessary, seek guidance from senior management or an ethics committee to ensure compliance and uphold institutional values. 5. Communicate decisions clearly and professionally, based on objective criteria. Question 18. Consider a scenario where a prospective student preparing for the Alfred Nobel University Dnipro entrance exam is struggling with a specific essay question that requires demonstrating analytical skills. The student is aware that the exam strictly prohibits plagiarism and requires original work. The student has access to online resources that offer pre-written essays on similar topics and also knows of individuals who have successfully used paraphrased content from these sources in past applications without being caught. What is the most appropriate course of action for this student to uphold the integrity of the entrance examination process? Option A. The student should find a pre-written essay online that closely matches the question, paraphrase its content extensively, and submit it as their own, assuming the risk of detection is low. Option B. The student should focus on finding a service that offers custom-written essays for the entrance exam, ensuring it is tailored to the specific question. Option C. The student should seek out individuals who have previously submitted work for this exam and ask them for their essay responses to use as a reference or inspiration. Option D. The student should independently research the topic, develop their own arguments, and meticulously cite any external sources used to support their analysis, ensuring the final submission is entirely their original work. The correct answer is D. The student should independently research the topic, develop their own arguments, and meticulously cite any external sources used to support their analysis, ensuring the final submission is entirely their original work. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire to present their work and the university's established academic integrity policies. The pressure to succeed in a competitive entrance exam environment can lead some students to consider shortcuts. The university's regulatory framework, as outlined for the Alfred Nobel University Dnipro entrance exam, strictly prohibits plagiarism and mandates original work. Therefore, any approach that deviates from this core principle is professionally and ethically unsound. The correct approach involves the student independently completing all assigned tasks and ensuring that any external sources are properly cited according to academic standards. This aligns directly with the core tenets of academic integrity expected by the Alfred Nobel University Dnipro entrance exam. The regulatory framework for this exam emphasizes original thought and the prohibition of plagiarism. Adhering to these guidelines ensures fairness, upholds the value of the degree, and fosters a culture of genuine learning. Ethically, it demonstrates honesty and respect for the academic process. An incorrect approach that involves submitting work that is not entirely the student's own, even if paraphrased, directly violates the academic integrity policy of the Alfred Nobel University Dnipro entrance exam. It constitutes plagiarism, a serious academic offense. Another incorrect approach, such as purchasing or obtaining pre-written answers, is also a clear violation of the exam's regulatory framework, as it bypasses the assessment of the student's own knowledge and abilities. A third incorrect approach, which might involve collaborating with others on individual assignments without explicit permission, also undermines the principle of individual assessment and can be considered a form of academic misconduct under the exam's guidelines. All these incorrect approaches fail to uphold the university's commitment to academic honesty and the integrity of its entrance examination process. Professionals facing similar situations should first identify the core ethical and regulatory requirements. In an academic context, this means understanding and adhering to the university's academic integrity policies. The decision-making process should involve a clear assessment of whether an action directly supports or undermines these principles. If there is any doubt, seeking clarification from university authorities or academic advisors is crucial. The paramount consideration should always be honesty, originality, and compliance with established rules. Question 19. The monitoring system demonstrates an unusual pattern of cursor movement and intermittent screen flickering during an applicant's examination session, raising concerns about potential unauthorized assistance. What is the most appropriate immediate action to ensure the integrity of the entrance exam process? Option A. Automatically disqualify the applicant based on the monitoring system's alert, assuming a violation has occurred. Option B. Immediately flag the applicant's session for a thorough review by the examination board to investigate the observed anomalies against the university's academic integrity policy. Option C. Contact the applicant during the examination to inquire about the unusual cursor movements and screen flickering. Option D. Dismiss the observed anomalies as a potential technical issue with the monitoring software and proceed with the examination without further action. Correct answer is B. Immediately flag the applicant's session for a thorough review by the examination board to investigate the observed anomalies against the university's academic integrity policy. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to demonstrate an understanding of the ethical and regulatory principles governing academic integrity within the context of a university entrance examination. The core difficulty lies in distinguishing between legitimate assistance and academic misconduct, particularly when technology is involved. A nuanced judgment is needed to uphold the fairness and validity of the examination process. The correct approach involves recognizing that any attempt to gain an unfair advantage through unauthorized means, including the use of external aids or communication during the exam, constitutes academic misconduct. This aligns with the fundamental principles of academic integrity, which emphasize honesty, trust, fairness, respect, and responsibility. Specifically, the regulatory framework for university entrance exams, as would be understood in the context of Alfred Nobel University Dnipro, mandates that all applicants must complete the examination independently and without external assistance. This ensures a level playing field, and that the assessment accurately reflects the applicant's own knowledge and abilities. An incorrect approach would be to interpret the monitoring system's alert as a minor technical glitch, or to assume that any observed anomaly is not significant enough to warrant further investigation. This demonstrates a lack of understanding of the seriousness of academic misconduct and the importance of upholding examination standards. Such an interpretation could lead to the admission of unqualified candidates, thereby undermining the reputation and academic rigor of the university. Another incorrect approach would be to immediately disqualify the applicant without a proper review process. While vigilance is necessary, a fair process requires an initial assessment of the evidence to determine if a violation has indeed occurred, rather than making an immediate punitive decision based solely on an alert. This could lead to unfair accusations and a breach of due process. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic approach. 1. Acknowledge and record all alerts from the monitoring system. 2. Initiate a preliminary review of the evidence associated with the alert to assess its potential significance. 3. If the preliminary review suggests a possible violation, follow established university procedures for investigating academic misconduct. This typically involves gathering further evidence, providing the applicant with an opportunity to respond, and making a decision based on a thorough assessment of all facts against the university's academic integrity policy. 4. Ensure that all actions taken are consistent with the principles of fairness, transparency, and due process. Question 20. The investigation demonstrates that an applicant for the Alfred Nobel University Dnipro entrance exam has submitted a personal statement that contains claims about extracurricular achievements which do not fully align with the supporting documents provided. The admissions committee is reviewing this application. Which of the following actions represents the most appropriate and ethically sound approach for the admissions committee? Option A. Share the concerns about the applicant's statement with other applicants to ensure fairness. Option B. Request a formal explanation from the applicant regarding the discrepancies between their personal statement and supporting documents, and review their response before making a final decision. Option C. Immediately reject the application due to suspected misrepresentation of achievements. Option D. Accept the application as submitted, assuming the personal statement is a subjective interpretation of achievements. The correct answer is C. Immediately reject the application due to suspected misrepresentation of achievements. Explanation. The investigation demonstrates a scenario where an applicant for admission to Alfred Nobel University Dnipro has provided information that appears to be inconsistent with their academic records. This presents a professionally challenging situation for the admissions committee, requiring a careful balance between fairness to the applicant and upholding the integrity of the university's admission process. The challenge lies in discerning genuine errors from deliberate misrepresentation without resorting to premature judgment or violating the applicant's rights. The correct approach involves a thorough and impartial review of all submitted documents, a direct and respectful request for clarification from the applicant regarding the discrepancies, and a commitment to making a decision based on verified facts and established university policies. This approach is ethically sound and aligns with principles of due process and fairness. Specifically, it adheres to the implicit regulatory framework governing university admissions, which emphasizes transparency, accuracy, and the right of an applicant to explain any perceived inconsistencies. The university's internal guidelines and the general principles of academic integrity would mandate such a measured response. An incorrect approach of immediately rejecting the application based on the initial suspicion of misrepresentation is ethically flawed and potentially violates the applicant's right to be heard. This premature rejection fails to acknowledge the possibility of honest mistakes or misunderstandings, thereby demonstrating a lack of due diligence and fairness. Another incorrect approach, that of accepting the application without addressing the discrepancies, compromises the integrity of the admission process and could lead to admitting students who do not meet the required standards, potentially undermining the academic reputation of Alfred Nobel University Dnipro. A third incorrect approach, which involves publicly questioning the applicant's honesty without a formal process, constitutes a breach of confidentiality and can cause undue reputational damage to the applicant, violating principles of privacy and respect. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a structured approach. First, identify and document the specific discrepancies. Second, consult relevant university policies and admission guidelines. Third, formulate a clear and neutral request for clarification from the applicant, providing them with an opportunity to respond. Fourth, evaluate the applicant's response in conjunction with all other evidence. Finally, make a decision based on the totality of the information, adhering strictly to established university procedures and ethical standards.